Besides dating men, it's literally the most frustrating thing I hate about living in Istanbul. Herkese merhaba. Welcome to another episode of So This is Turkey. And today we're going to talk about a problem which is reviled by locals and foreigners alike. And it's taxis! So there were over 43,000 complaints against taxi drivers last year. And a lot of these complaints include accusations of overcharging or scamming, not picking up a passenger, some racist incidents, and even a couple of horror stories, including what happened to a French woman and her husband last year, where the taxi driver actually attacked the woman. I even have my own horror stories with taxi drivers. There was one time I was leaving the Fatih district to come back to where I was staying at the time, Gümüşsuyu, and I reserved a taxi with an app called B-Taxi, which I'll talk about later, and the driver picked me up. The driver was not wearing a mask. Again, this is Corona time. He was smoking the entire ride, and then when we finally got to my home, he charged me the wrong price. I complained and said that's not the right price in the app. He complained back. I said, I will pay and then I'm going to call the police. He actually grabbed my arm and tried to stop me from leaving the car. I was freaking out and I was so angry that I just immediately got my phone and literally called the police. I called 112 and I also called 153 to report him. Yeah, it was so bad because he actually followed me back to my front door of where I live. He was like, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, this is a nightmare. And this is like, this is like commonly accepted in Istanbul. But how did the taxi situation get like this in the first place? Well, it's a complicated mix of politics and turf. But first, let's put things into context. Let's go back to the 1990s. Istanbul had 8 million people, and at the time, President Erdogan was the mayor of Istanbul. There were about 17,000 licensed taxis operating at the time. Fast forward to 2022. Istanbul now has twice as many people, almost about 50 million people, but there's still the same number of taxis. So if there's more people, why not get more taxis to service the need or demand? One issue, which I think is a theory, is that relations between the president of Turkey, Erdogan, and the current mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu, are a little bit frosty right now. İmamoğlu was elected in 2019 as a member of the opposition party, CHP. President Erdogan is a member of the current majority party, AKP. İmamoğlu is also seen as a frontrunner in the 2023 presidential elections and could overtake Erdogan's seat. Since İmamoğlu's tenure, he and the city of Istanbul have provided several proposals to Istanbul's governing transportation body, and every time they've done it, it's been rejected. The last time they tried to do it, they proposed 5,000 new licensed taxis, and every time it's rejected by the governing board. The governing board is politically split between AKP members and CHP members. So that's one theory I have in mind. But there's another powerful player in this turf war, and that's Istanbul's taxi union. This union is so powerful that they were actually able to drive Uber out of Istanbul, no pun intended. Not only did the union not support İmamoğlu's proposals, but they are also aligned with AKP. So it's clear that we're not going to have any new taxis in Istanbul for a while. But what about the ones that we do have, and why are they so problematic? Well, this is where it actually gets even murkier. So unlike in most cities, taxi drivers don't actually own the taxis here. These taxis are owned anonymously by wealthy individuals, and the taxis cost about 2.6 million Turkish lira, which in today's currency is about $191,000. Of course, no one would ever reveal that they own a taxi, so these individuals hire brokers, and these brokers are actually responsible for hiring taxi drivers. Typically during a day, a taxi is rotating between 2 or 3, maybe even 4 drivers. However, the money that taxi drivers do earn doesn't go straight to their pockets. Typically, a lot of the money has to go to the license fee for the taxi that they rent. and that fee is around 1,000, just over $1,000 a month, or 14,500 Turkish lira. That is a lot of money for someone living in Turkey. And typically drivers can't earn that much money in a month, let alone a day, to cover the license fee and still earn a decent living. There have been reports about some drivers earning less than $10 a day, or 153 lira a day. It's not enough to survive, it's not enough to pay for the license fee and also actually make a decent living. On top of this, they work very long hours, this industry is not regulated, and the brokers and the taxi owner is in control. So the driver really doesn't have a lot of autonomy apart from just earning as much money as they can and hopefully paying off the license to actually earn it. So it's a crappy situation not just for passengers, but also for the taxi driver. And until this improves, how can we avoid taking a problematic taxi in the first place? Well, as an adopted Turk, I have these key tips for you. Istanbul's transportation system is one of the best and most well-connected in the world. You have the metro, you have the metrobus, you have ferries, you have regular buses, and all of these are accessible with the Istanbul card, which is the city's transit card. You also have a dolmuş, which is a shared taxi for a fixed route from one place in Istanbul to another, and also minibuses that go everywhere. 9 times out of 10, you almost don't even need to take a taxi if you're in Istanbul, because all of these ways of getting around are available and easily accessible. I only take a taxi if I need to go to the airport and I have a lot of luggage, or I forgot my Istanbul card, or I just need to get somewhere really quickly and I'm in a rush. But typically you almost don't even need to take a taxi because Istanbul's transport system is just so good. Another tip, never ever ever hail a taxi off the street. Just use B-Taxi. B-Taxi is basically Istanbul's version of Uber. It's available for Android or iOS, you can switch the language to English, and you can pay it by cash or by credit card, which is what I always do. The driver has all of the information about your destination in the app on their phone, and you do too. So you never ever have to worry about them scamming you, paying the wrong price, or going the wrong direction. In the very rare instance where you do need a taxi and you do need to hail one off the street, just make sure the driver is using the meter. As of this year, the meter should start at 7 Turkish lira. Also, make sure not only to monitor the meter, but also monitor where the driver is going. One thing I always do is I open Google Maps and I have the destination on my phone and I follow to make sure the driver is going the right way, because the driver could say, oh, I don't really know the route, or this way is the quickest. It's one way to prevent from being scammed. Also, another thing is to always carry cash when you do take a taxi, because the drivers might lie about their credit card machines not working, or it could just not work. Another tip. So if you are going to or leaving Istanbul's main airports, you actually don't even need to take a taxi at all. There's 2 really great bus systems that you can use. If you're leaving or going to Istanbul airport, you can take the Hava East bus. And if you're going to or leaving Sabiha Gökçen airport, you can also take Hava bus. These buses go all over the city, they have different routes, and it's actually a really cozy, nice ride. It's also around 30 lira depending on where you're going, which is nothing compared to what you would pay for a taxi. Lastly, because it's a crappy situation for taxi drivers too, if you do find one that's respectful, one that's nice, one that's really helpful, don't hesitate to tip them, and always be polite. I will say that I have had some really great taxi drivers who've taken me from point A to point B, have been really friendly, have been really helpful, and I understand that it's not an ideal situation for them. I hope you're in a situation where you never have a problem with the taxi driver, but if anything comes up, whether it's overcharging, verbal abuse, or even something much worse, call the city's main hotline at 153 and report them. You can also just call the police by dialing 112. Always keep an eye on the actual taxi ID, which is on the side of the taxi, or the person's name and their license number, which should be on the dashboard on the passenger side. And this should go without saying, but never, ever, ever take an unlicensed or unofficial taxi. If you find someone that's like, hey, I can take you to Sultanahmet, or I can take you to Taksim, and they don't have an official license plate or they're not an official taxi, you're opening yourself up for a world of problems. So never, ever, ever do that. If you live in or visited Istanbul and have had an interesting or unsettling taxi experience, please be sure to leave a comment below. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions about taxis in Istanbul. I have had so many bad and a couple of good experiences, and I'm happy to help. Until then, ride safe and görüşürüz. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like it or leave a comment. You can also subscribe to follow my adventures here and on Instagram. Be sure to follow the hashtag #SoThisIsTurkey. Thanks!